You are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. Fugitive diamond trader Mehul Choksi, wanted in connection with the Punjab National Bank loan fraud case, has been arrested by the police in Belgium. This is what a report claims. US President Donald Trump's decision to exempt some electronics from tariffs offered a welcome reprieve to Silicon Valley, but the relief could be brief. The carve-out, which applies to all countries including China, signaled a further softening of Trump's aggressive trade agenda. EU Trade Commissioner Maros Sefcovic will travel to Washington today to meet his US counterparts after the bloc promised to suspend its metals retaliation tariffs. Chinese leader Xi Jinping begins a visit to Southeast Asia today in an effort to strengthen Beijing's regional economic ties following President Donald Trump's tariff salvo. India has launched its biggest ever joint naval exercise with African nations, part of a push to boost its influence on the continent and presence in the Indian Ocean. The United States and Iran are set to hold a second round of nuclear talks this week after an initial meeting over the weekend that both sides described as productive. Well, a big focus currently, the Belgian police have arrested diamond merchant Mehul Choksi, who's one of the two prime accused in the $2 billion Punjab National Bank fraud case, as per reports. Mr. Choksi was arrested on Saturday, this is what reports claim, at the behest of the Central Bureau of Investigation, India's request, and is still in jail. As my colleague Nikunj has been reporting, Indian investigating agencies sent a formal communique to Belgian authorities seeking Mehul Choksi's arrest after he had been spotted in that country. This is the latest we can disclose to you. As per reports, the Belgian police have arrested diamond merchant Mehul Choksi, who is one of the two prime accused in the $2 billion Punjab National Bank fraud case. In fact, as per reports, Mehul Choksi was arrested on Saturday at the behest of the Central Bureau of Investigation and is still in jail. My colleague Nikunj has been reporting that Indian investigating agencies had sent a formal communique to Belgian authorities seeking Mehul Choksi's arrest after he had been spotted in that country. Switching our attention now to the other big story we're tracking, US President Donald Trump's decision to exempt some electronics from tariffs offered a welcome reprieve to Silicon Valley, but the relief could be brief. The carve-out, which applies to all countries, including China, signaled a further softening of Trump's aggressive trade agenda after he hit pause on nearly all Liberation Day duty hikes just last week. But you must note that the exemption could lift investor sentiment toward companies like Apple and Nvidia, which have been two of Wall Street's biggest losers amid the tariff chaos. You know, both rely on overseas production, and Apple is particularly unlikely to shift its manufacturing to the US. This is what experts have endorsed as well. Trump's plans remain inscrutable. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has said the electronics exception was temporary, teasing new semiconductor tariffs coming in the next few weeks. So keep an eye on that as well. Meanwhile, I must inform you that US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has said that the administration's decision to exempt a range of electronic devices from tariffs implemented earlier was only a temporary reprieve, as I mentioned, with the Secretary announcing that those items would be subject to semiconductor tariffs that will likely come as soon as a month or two. Now, on the other hand, EU Trade Commissioner Maros Sefcovic will travel today to Washington to hold meetings with the US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, as well as the US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. The Commission is hoping to advance negotiations on tariffs after weeks of deadlock. The EU, by the way, has offered to level US and EU tariffs to 0% on industrial goods. The US, by the way, currently imposes 25% tariffs on EU imports of aluminium and steel, 25% tariffs on EU cars, and 10% tariffs across the board. To take this further and for further clarity, we have with us Senior Editor of Foreign Affairs, Daniel Block. Daniel, always a pleasure to chat with you and have you on our show. I want to talk about the timing of these discussions. They seem pivotal. But do you believe this move by Donald Trump to reduce tariffs is more of a strategic maneuver to ease tensions, or a genuine attempt at recalibrating US-EU trade relations?
I think it's probably both. And I would add to that mix as well,
Please.
that it's part of this ongoing tension in his mind between his love of tariffs and his desire to not slow the American economy or reduce the strength of the dollar or spur inflation. He has a lot of things in mind that he wants to do, and they're in tension. In fact, they're often mutually incompatible. He can't slow inflation. He can't promote economic growth. He can't have, related to inflation, low consumer prices for electronics. And he can't have the dollar be the world's reserve currency while simultaneously raising levies on products from across the board. And tech is a particularly pivotal sector because of how much relies on it, because how much money different tech products cost. And so I think the arguments that are going on about tech right now really kind of encapsulate the fight that's going on both in his own mind and among his administration about how far to go in terms of tariffs.
Absolutely. In fact, many are also arguing that this pause in tariffs offers a window of opportunity for a solid deal. But Daniel, how likely is it that this goodwill gesture will translate into concrete policy changes on both sides that are actually here to stay?
With the obvious caveat that the US president is pretty mercurial and changes his mind
Absolutely.
often. And so I'm always hesitant to make clear predictions. But having said that, I'm slightly optimistic that there will be some sort of deal.
All right.
I think what we saw after Liberation Day, as they called it, and the broad-based tariffs on every country across different goods, was that they wanted to pull back. And I imagine that the president is looking for face-saving ways in order to not just delay the implementation of broad-based across-the-board tariffs, but to actually permanently come up with various exemptions or excuses not to do what he proposed doing earlier. And so that's why I'm optimistic that there'll be some kind of deal that emerges from all this. On the other hand, the president loves tariffs and he gets angry when he feels like he's lost or he's been pulled from doing something that he wanted to do. And that's what's happened here. So I think that there are competing impulses there as well.
And in terms of the wider ramifications, the broader global trading environment has shifted dramatically in the recent years, as we understand, with protectionism on the rise. Daniel, how do you see this tariff dispute fitting into the larger picture of international trade wars? Would you say it's a harbinger of things to come, or one of the rare examples of two economic giants negotiating rather than clashing?
I think I'd say in many ways it's both, but more the former than the latter. You know, exactly what U.S. tariffs are going to be on different products when all is said and done is unclear, but the directionality is apparent. We're moving into a world where the U.S. is turning its back on free trade.
Right.
It's probably not going to do what Trump originally set out to do and have these sweeping, expansive tariffs on almost every country and on some territories that are not countries at all and don't even have people in them. But we're moving in this direction where there's going to be higher tariffs. And we see some retrenchment, some pulling back, but there's still 10% retaliatory tariffs on almost every country in the world. So there might be some carve-outs. There'll be some negotiating that happens as we enter in this kind of new reality where tariffs, for the United States at least, are the norm. But on the whole, I think the directionality is going that way. We're moving into a world of tariffs.
Well, Daniel, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show and hear your perspective. Well, the EU Trade Commissioner will travel to Washington today to hold meetings with the US Commerce Secretary and the US Trade representatives. We will, of course, revert to you for regular updates. And in other crucial news, Chinese leader Xi Jinping begins a visit to Southeast Asia today in an effort to strengthen Beijing's regional economic ties following Donald Trump's tariff salvo. With stops actually planned in Vietnam and Cambodia, Malaysia, Xi Jinping is expected to cast China as a reliable trading partner in contrast to the unpredictability of Trump's Washington. But the three smaller nations must perform a diplomatic balancing act, as many argue. Officials are likely wary of cozying up to China while pursuing trade deals with Trump, and they want to protect their domestic economies from a glut of cheap Chinese goods suddenly shut out from the US market. Now, even amid this chaos, no Southeast Asian country has given up yet on its relationship with America, as you have noticed and as analysts have highlighted as well. And turning our attention now to the new federal rule in the United States that could dramatically impact millions of immigrants, both undocumented and those legally residing on work, student, or travel visas. Now, under new policy, any non-citizen over the age of 18 is now required to carry proof of registration at all times, regardless of visa status. The Department of Homeland Security, in a strongly worded statement, has emphasized that all non-citizens 18 and older must carry this documentation at all times. This administration has directed the DHS to prioritize enforcement. There will be no sanctuary for non-compliance. This is what the latest statement clearly says. Now, this rule, which was effective from the 11th of April, follows a district court ruling that cleared the Trump administration's path to enforce the long-dormant Alien Registration Act, which is a World War II era law that mandates all non-citizens in the US for more than 30 days to register with the federal government. Failure to comply could lead to either fines, imprisonment, or even deportation. But for further clarity on how this will play out and the legal remedies and ramifications, we have with us live from Kansas City legal expert Rekha Sharma Crawford. Thank you so much, ma'am, for making time for us and joining us currently. This new rule mandates that all non-citizens over the age of 18 have to carry proof of registration at all times. How do you think this will affect the day-to-day lives of immigrants in the US, both legal as well as undocumented?
Well, I think a couple of things. Let me start by talking about the court hearing or the court case that you originally discussed. It did not actually go to the merits of whether or not this registration requirement is lawful. The court actually made a ruling based on a specific determination that the people that brought the case were not the right people to bring it. I say that only because I think this is going to be a situation where there will be more litigation. I don't think it's the end of it. Until then, though, there is this requirement that people register. I think the statute requires very specific people to register, and what the Department of Homeland Security is doing right now is taking a very broad brush view of those requirements. It doesn't necessarily say that people have to carry documents and show them, at all times. I don't think that's exactly what it says, but the requirement does show that if you've, certainly after April 11th, if you've entered the United States, you must in fact register. There's a form that is presented online on the government website that must be completed. Yep. And I think there are certainly with clarity after April 11th that people must do that. As to its retroactive effect, I think that is an issue that is still to be litigated.
But ma'am, with the threat of fines, jail time, or deportation for non-compliance, what kind of practical challenges will these new rules present, especially for immigrant communities that are already under strain?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. People are already under strain, and I think this is going to increase it even more. The stress levels are high, and I think this is designed to do exactly that, is to increase fear and increase the reality that there are people who will say they're leaving the United States on their own. The administration has created an app that's called CBP Home that they're encouraging people to use. And I think these types of rulings and these types of proclamations are designed to do exactly that, is to encourage people to leave.
Well, for immigrants who are legally in the United States, such as those with student visas, work visas, or green cards, this rule still creates an additional layer of complexity. But as always, Ms. Rekha Sharma Crawford, thank you so much for making time for us and joining us on NDTV. With that, let's turn our attention now to Canada, where the Liberals continue to lead the federal election race at the halfway point of the campaign, a new poll suggests. But the Conservatives have narrowed the gap. In fact, the latest Ipsos poll exclusively for Global News shows 42% of Canadians surveyed would vote for the Liberals, down 4% from last week, and the first time since the election began that the party has lost ground. The Conservatives, meanwhile, are up 2 points at 36%. Maha Siddiqui has been tracking the latest developments for us. She joins us live from Vancouver at the moment. Maha, take us through all the latest details we need to know ahead of the 28th April election.
Good morning, Parmeshwar. What we're seeing at the moment is that the midway mark of the campaign is over. We are entering week 4 of the campaign, and the Liberals have gone down 4 points as per the Ipsos survey. This is an opinion poll, and the Conservatives have gone up 2 points. The Conservatives are narrowing the gap now with the Liberal Party. But the slide for the NDP that's a cause of problem, really, for the NDP. This is because their stake as an official party itself will be in for question if they perform as per what the opinion polls are suggesting at the moment. But for the Liberals, they would have liked to keep that lead ahead of the Conservatives, as we were seeing over the last 2 weeks of the campaign. But it appears now that the issue of the trade war with the US has now once again gone back in the list of issues for the Canadians, with the economy, healthcare, as well as affordability issues once again becoming the main issues. And that is why perhaps the Conservatives are seen taking that 2-point jump that we have seen from last week's campaign trail. So this is good news, perhaps for the Conservatives, the only good news that they've seen since the election of Mark Carney as the leader of the Liberal Party, and since when the fortunes of the Liberal Party seem to have turned on the opinion poll scales. Also, the fortunes turned because of Donald Trump and the tariff threat, as well as the annexation threat that was coming from the US. But so far, we are seeing the continuous U-turns as far as the tariffs issue is concerned from the United States. And at the moment, because of the global turmoil that is being seen, Canadians perhaps feel that they are not alone in this fight against the US, that there are many other countries looking at taking on Donald Trump. And therefore, this issue seems to have gone back as the number 2 issue now, and the number 1 issue has become affordability, something that was an issue over the last 1 year, which was initially giving that fillip to the Conservatives. However, on a head-to-head opinion poll between Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, Mark Carney still leads in opinion polls. Meanwhile, on campuses here across Canada, Parmeshwar, we are seeing early polling open today. Today from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., around 100 universities and college campuses had early voting, and this will continue till Wednesday. This is largely to encourage voters between 18 to 24 years of age. This is because in the previous elections in 2021, the percentage of youth voters was around 47%, which was much lower than the national average of around 63%. And therefore, this is the way to encourage the young people to be participating in this process of elections.
As always, Maha, thank you so much for joining us with the lowdown from Vancouver. Well, in other crucial news, the United States and Iran are set to hold a second round of nuclear talks this week after an initial meeting over the weekend that both sides described as productive. The negotiations in Oman on Saturday, which were the highest level discussions between Washington and Tehran in years, displayed an effort to avoid what neither side wants, which is another war in the Middle East. The next meeting could see progress on short-term agreements like Iran pausing uranium enrichment in exchange for relief from some maximum pressure sanctions. But Tehran is motivated to sustain the forward momentum, as per experts. The Iranian economy is hobbled by international restrictions, as you know, and public discontent is rising. By the way, the sentiment among some residents is that money is like ice and it's melting very fast. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has revived talks with Saudi officials over a deal that would give Saudi Arabia access to US nuclear technology and potentially allow it to enrich uranium. This is what Energy Secretary Chris Wright has said. The deal, which the Biden administration had pursued as part of a broader agreement for Saudi Arabia to establish ties with Israel, would enable the kingdom to develop a commercial nuclear power industry, Mr. Wright has told journalists in Riyadh. In fact, he said that he expected to see meaningful developments this year itself. Let's turn our attention now to India and Africa's joint naval exercise. Well, India and Africa have launched the mega joint naval exercise. It's scheduled for 6 days and 10 nations are participating in this current naval exercise. You must note that this is Africa-India's key maritime engagement, and this drill would conclude on the 18th of April. This initiative aligns with the vision of the Prime Minister Modi, promoting mutual and holistic advancement for security as well as growth across the regions. But analysts say the maneuvers are part of New Delhi's broader ambitions to play a more assertive role in maritime operations, including anti-piracy efforts and deepen ties on the continent, where our influence we're competing against China as well as emerging competitors like Russia, Turkey, as well as the United Arab Emirates. Well, from Bollywood to Broadway, the iconic Indian movie DDLJ or Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge is now a British musical show in English. An English theatrical rom-com directed by Aditya Chopra will be launched in Manchester in England next month. My colleague Radhika Iyer met with the top protagonists playing Shah Rukh Khan and Kajol's characters Raj and Simran in London as they get ready for rehearsals of this musical show. Listen in.
Baisakhi is one which celebrates new crops, harvest, something new, a rebirth similar to a crop that dies every year, comes back again in life. And similar to that, is what is happening with one particular movie in Indian cinema which touches the hearts of so many millions of people world over, especially South Indians living anywhere in the world. A tune from the song, a mention of a particular character or perhaps the protagonists, a particular location in Europe, or even a dialogue can make people nostalgic. I am talking about Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge. From London, in fact, from this exciting location of Dishoom in Covent Garden, with me are Ashley and Jenna. Are you better known as Raj and Simran of this new era?
Maybe now. Like, the response to the show has been amazing, and I think the fact that it's after 30 years, it's coming back around, and everyone's so excited. So yeah, it is really cool to get to be like connected to this story and these characters, because it means so much to so many people.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Let's chat a little bit, or tell our audiences why we're here in London. Chatting with these two amazing people, Ashley Day and Jenna Pandya, who are playing Raj and Simran. In fact, Raj and Simran. Roger. This is a musical show, an adaptation in English language of this iconic movie DDLJ, which is celebrating 30 years. Wow, 30 years ago. I can't even remember what my age was and how little I could have been to understand the multiple emotions and the joyful scenes of that movie, but I love it. What a movie. What a movie. For millions of people. So this is a musical show for 2 hours and 19 minutes, which is going to be performed by Jenna and Ashley as Simran and Raj. And they're launching in the United Kingdom. So tell us a little bit about this musical show and when it's going to be brought alive by the two of you.
So we opened in Manchester on the, I might have to lean back, the 29th of May. And we start rehearsals tomorrow in London. So we have 5 weeks here with a cast. I think it's around 30. Is that right?
Which is a big cast.
Big cast.
Yeah, big show.
And we have 5 weeks in London, and then before heading up to Manchester, it is so exciting. It's a rebirth of this amazing movie, such a huge cultural, iconic piece of movie, and now it's been turned into this crazy cool rom-com, rom-com to like the T. That was my first initial response to the material. Like, when do we just see a rom-com these days? That doesn't really happen.
Yeah, I remember when we first met in the auditions, and Ashley was telling me, like, it's so nice to just be a part of something that's just really funny and feel good, you know, especially with like the way the world is. It's nice. People are going to come and see this show and just walk away feeling so happy, feeling rejuvenated, and that's what's so lovely about it. And I think opening in Manchester as well, that's such a vibrant city. It's such a cool place.
Meanwhile, the Netflix miniseries Adolescence has got everyone talking. It has become Netflix's fourth most watched show ever. My colleague Abira Dhar spoke exclusively with the actor Christine Tamarco, who portrays Manda Miller, the mother of a 13-year-old arrested for murder. Abira actually explored Christine's perspective on incel culture and its dangerous impact on modern society. Just listen in.
Did you know what is an incel? What is incel? Did you know before you read the script?
No, I didn't know. I'd never heard the word incel until Stephen sent me the scripts. When I first read the scripts and read the word incel and obviously our story, then I looked into it and I was absolutely horrified. I was horrified. I had no idea that this level of misogyny was going on in our world, and that our children were exposed to that. It's absolutely horrifying. It's terrifying. It is terrifying. And I think, you know, these are children, you know, they're vulnerable. You know, for them to be radicalized like that is it's horrifying. And I think the success of the show and how people have felt about the show and the fact that it's opened up so many conversations, not just with mothers and fathers, with aunties, uncles, you know, people who haven't got children, people who've got children, that it resonates with everyone, you know, with children, adults, because it's exposed to a level of what is happening out there and how dangerous it is.